Okay, this is take 2, and it's like 1,000 degrees in here, but I'm team hot coffee. Let's get started. Hey everyone, I'm Carmen, the creator of MakeRealSense.com, a personal finance blog dedicated to teaching you all about the do's and the don'ts of personal finance with a little humor on the side. And today I'm going to be talking about my August budget busters. Can I cue the tears? Alright, so for those of you that don't follow me on Instagram, where I kind of do little IG stories to go over what is currently happening in my life, if you don't follow me, hit me up on Instagram. It's a good show. Anyways, I have been documenting what has been happening in August, so I'm getting very close to my debt-free date, which is September 28th. I should be debt-free. I'm super, super, super pumped about it. Obviously, clearly no one wants a bunch of debt, but I have been getting hit with various things and expenses that are coming out of everywhere and nowhere at the same time. If that makes any sense. All right, so just to give you a quick background, if you don't follow me on Instagram, I have, for the month of August, had 2 unexpected expenses. One is medical bills that have come through, and then 2 is my iPhone. My iPhone's, for what they would say, is ancient. I have a 6, which I know that's not that old, but apparently it's like 3 years old, and the software is like 4. I don't know. But I had to get my iPhone fixed. So those are my 2 budget busters for the month. And I thought, what better way than to show you guys how I adjust my numbers to make up for those unexpected expenses that I didn't think were going to be coming through. Obviously they're unexpected. But how do I go about adjusting my budget to account for that stuff and pay for things that have just randomly come up? Because life happens. At least to me anyways. So just to give you a quick background about how I actually budget, I get paid bi-weekly, which means basically every 2 weeks I get a paycheck. Now, what I like to do before the month begins is have all that money allocated through a zero-based budget. I do have a video on that. Check it out. I will link below. But I like to do a zero-based budget at the beginning of the month, before the month even starts, before I even get any money into my account, to make sure I have every single dollar of that paycheck allocated to some category until I hit 0. All right. So on any given month, I have to, tweak my budget here and there. It's gotten down to a very fine-tuned process. So it's in rare instances that I'm caught off guard by something. But again, life happens. So I've been budgeting for 2 years, 9 months, and I realized that, every budget's not going to be perfect. Every month I'm not going to hit my numbers, and that's okay. You have to be flexible with your approach. But never change the end goal or game. Never do it. Anyways, back on track. So I allocate all of my money before the month begins. And I have very set categories. I usually don't spend outside of that. But if I do, those categories usually fall towards the end of my budget in a section that I like to call ad hoc or miscellaneous. Those are expenses that maybe come up in the middle of the month or the beginning of the month that you weren't necessarily prepared for. And then from there, I tweak the numbers to kind of account for those items that were just happened out of nowhere. So maybe I forgot someone's birthday and I was like, I need to buy a birthday gift, and I didn't budget for this at all, and I don't have money or space to budget for it. Or in my instance, or my case, having to budget for medical bills and an iPhone expense, because who can live without their phone nowadays? When's the last time you've written a letter? All right, so I wanted to kind of go over how I go about doing that. This is a printed copy of my budget, and again, what I do is list all of my categories. And something that I learned from You Need a Budget that I love to preach is prioritize your categories. So from the highest priority to the least priority, and then anything ad hoc, goes down towards the bottom. Now these sheets are free on my website. I will link below. You can print these out. I have a whole budget binder, 14 sheets, free 99, that you can go on and tackle your finances. And these are also sheets that I use. I've recently started using the printables, but I use the Debt Attack Pack. I'll link to that below. It's an Excel-based spreadsheet budget pack that covers anything from debt to savings. And it's awesome. It's something I created. Anyway, so I print this out, and then I list out all of my allocations for the month. There's also on here a tracking columns that, you know, you have your budgeted amount and what you actually ended up spending, which is good for some people. I personally don't track. I just actually started tracking probably about 2 weeks ago, so it's going okay. I'm not fairly consistent, but I'm getting better as the week and months go along. Because I just started. All right. So I have this printed out at the beginning of the month, and this is something that, again, I have to adjust should anything come up day one of the month that I wasn't necessarily expecting. So I'm going to show you guys how I went about tweaking, or how, should any extra expenses come up that you are unaware of, how you should go about doing that, or at least the way that works for me. So number one way that I tweak things for my budget to account for unexpected expenses is I look at my categories as they currently are and see where I can shave off money on my next check. So for example, say I allocate $100 to breakfast and lunch every 2 weeks. Now, if I am being lazy about meal prepping or whatever the case may be, is I have to be super strict about it coming from the next paycheck, especially if there's an unexpected expense that happened. So let's say I get paid next week and something has come up that it can wait until I get paid, but I didn't really have that money because I do my budget at the beginning of the month available to go to some random category that just came up. So if I allocate $100 to breakfast and lunch, I might get a little strict with that. I might try to see if I can skim that off, even though my budget is pretty tight because I try to allocate all of my extra income towards my debt. I try to see if I can cut back just a little bit more to squeeze maybe $10 or $15 out to actually cover that unexpected expense. And I do that with each category until I get to the very bottom category and see how much money I have left. And hopefully it's enough to cover that expense. I might have to, you know, cut one of them, like personal products, if I allocate something to that for the next paycheck. I might have to skim down on food or, you know, laundry, dry cleaning, and all that jazz. So I look, number one, to see where I can cut costs in my current categories. Number two, each month, I am a big advocate of saving money first, making that your number one priority, paying yourself first. So my second category where I might look to, you know, draw a little money out of before it hits my account is my savings. Now that's not to say it's savings that's sitting in my account. That is savings that I put as a line item on my budget prior to the month beginning. So it's not even money that's come into my account yet. So say for instance, every paycheck I like to set aside $100. What I do with that $100, if I'm looking to get a little extra money, is I might just not put the $100 in that paycheck, or I might just do $50 instead of doing $100 for that anticipated paycheck. So I might look to get a little money from there, but not the money that's sitting in my savings. It's all of my future savings, if that makes any sense. So again, if I allocate $100 every paycheck to savings at the beginning of the month, and I need help with some certain expense, I might look to not put any more money into my savings for that one paycheck, or I might cut down on the amount that I'm actually putting in for that particular paycheck. Number three way that I look to adjust my budget categories if I am faced with an unexpected expense is I might do both, right? So I might look to the categories that I currently have. Again, I mentioned that some of these are pretty tight, so it's hard for me to squeeze a little bit of money out of them because I know my budget ranges now. So I might look to, you know, cut personal products if I don't need anything, or like an Uber, my cab category, cut that and take that money, coupled with maybe skimming down a little bit on what I'm going to actually be depositing into my savings for that paycheck, combine those and hope that it all equals out. Now, if it doesn't and you're still short, it might be something that you want to look into as far as a side hustle, or kicking that up to see if maybe you can babysit, you know, deliver groceries. That's why it's great to always have a side hustle, something that you can fall back on to gain a little extra money. Now, I've also started doing VIP Kid. I've only taught one class, but that's a great way for me to cover unexpected expenses that might come through the door. All right, so these are my budget categories. they're all lined up here, pretty consistent every single month. That's why I've got it pretty fine-tuned to where all I have to do is tweak a couple of items if need be. And then this is my cash breakdown sheet. So I have this on Excel, which I use and essentially copy and paste over here. But for the example of this, or for the purposes of this, I wanted you guys to see kind of where I adjusted. So generally, I miscalculated on this. Obviously, I get 3 paychecks this month because it is August. So I didn't need to take out 64 for the gym, but that changes a few other categories, right? So that added extra money back to my original budget, which I had on here and on my Excel spreadsheet, but that just left me with $64 extra. And where you see Uber, I cut that from 20 down to 10. And then also for my cash envelopes, when I pulled the money out, I also adjusted here. So I took out 10 instead of the initial 20 that I had here. Dry cleaning, I actually went up $10 because I do have a lot of clothes that'll be in the dry cleaner, or I'll be sending to the dry cleaners this paycheck. So that's why I bumped it up $10. I knocked date night down to 0, so I completely scratched it out, freeing up another $65. And then I took miscellaneous down from $20 to $7. And then also, dry cleaning was supposed to be 30, and laundry is supposed to be 17, I think. Nope. Laundry and dry cleaning, 2 separate categories. So I don't know how that happened, but really dry cleaning is going to be the one that's going to be more. So I will have to obviously adjust that again. But this is how I went about adjusting my numbers. So again, I looked at my savings, which isn't on this sheet. It is on my Excel sheet. Again, this is how I adjusted my numbers for this month. So I took inventory of what I'd be putting into savings. It's not on this sheet. It's $300 every paycheck. And I basically got that down to 0, eliminated some categories, and that added extra money for me to be able to pay my medical bill as well as cover my phone for this past paycheck. And I mean, this has already happened. I've already pulled all this money out. But my envelopes came to $379 and my budget totals were adjusted. Again, this is basically a copy and paste where needed. And then sometimes I'll have 0, like I don't take out rent. If this was only a 2 paycheck period, this would be $800. But again, these are so fine-tuned that generally I'm able to stay within these ranges. And if anything, I adjust over here. So this is my actual column. This is budgeted. And this is where I made my inputs to get a little extra money out of my budget this past Friday. Yeah, so for this month, what I ended up doing was just adjusting my savings all the way down to the bare minimum, which is 0. And then also, I took some money out of other categories that I had already allocated. So for date night, that got nixed. Personal products, getting nixed. And this is just to cover my medical bills, which were $423 after I got the bill, and some copay, which is crazy. And then my iPhone expense, which is $172. I had to come up with that money somehow, some way in my budget. So I was able to do that by not putting anything to savings this paycheck, and also just cutting different categories within my current budget. So when I get paid this coming Friday, there will be some categories that I will not be, or I didn't take cash out for. Sorry, I just got paid. So when I got paid this past Friday, there were certain categories I just didn't take money out for. And they're line items that I take out money for every single paycheck. Just gotta sacrifice. I also didn't want to dip into what I currently have in savings, which is not a lot because it's going towards my debt. For my debt-free date, September 28th, check me out. But yeah, that's it. So gotta be flexible with your budgeting. Remember that. And you know, it's not something that you have to be so strict about. I always tell people, and even some of my clients, if you know, you drink coffee every day, you know, to each his own. That's what we all do. If you don't make it at home like me, because Folgers is delicious, it's amazing, then make sure you have a line item for that on your budget. And when it comes down to things like that, when you see where you're wasting money or, you know, spending money, or where your spending habits are going, if coffee is on here and you allocate $100 to that every month and you get into a rut, guess what's the first thing that probably needs to go for that month? just short term. It's a very short term thing. Always remember it that way. Can't talk today. Small tweaks and minor adjustments will make and go a big, long way. Well, I said that terribly. Will go a long way when it comes to budgeting and being on this journey towards becoming debt free. Thanks for tuning in, guys. It's Carmen from Make Real Sense, a blog dedicated to teaching you all about the do's and don'ts of personal finance with a little humor. Oh, did I dab right? On the side.